Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to head over to the GitHub repository that's in the description. And what you could do is you can go ahead and select this code button, which will give you a URL to clone the repository. You could clone the master branch, or you could kind of specify what branch you want to clone. I do have two branches, one being the master, one being the starter. So it's really up to you. I do recommend cloning the master branch. That way you can have both master and starter. And then once you have the master branch cloned, just go ahead and switch the starter branch through get checkout starter. If we go over to this URL here, I'll have in the description. This is the final project that we are going to build, which is hosted on Netlify at the moment. And then if I head over to localhost 3000, I do have the starter branch up and ready. Before jumping into the code, I do want to talk about these models that I was able to download from a website called Sketchfab. So I did not make these. I will have the creditor in the description. But what Sketchfab allows us to do is simply look for different 3D models that we could download GTLF files and pretty much just add them to our project. So if I were to look for the project we worked on, which was an armchair, I will select downloadable. I'm gonna disable show restricted because they do have models with like nudity stuff, so we don't want that. I think it was called Richie Armchair. Yes, so this is the one I got exactly, the yellow, the green, and the gray. If we go ahead and select it, you can see that you could play around with the 3D model here. You can also head over where it says download 3D model, and then you will select the auto converted format of the GLTF file. Select download, and then this will go ahead and download the file for you. It's going to give you two files as well as a texture folder. The textures are related to the model's look, so it's going to be image formats, and then it's going to give you a .bin and a .gltf file. Now you don't need to worry about downloading these models. I already have them in the starter branch. If we head over to the code, I have added them to the public folder, so you can see textures gray compressed, textures green compressed, textures yellow compressed, and then we have the armchair gray, green, and yellow bin and .gltf files. So if you wanted to add your own, which was like a different model than what I currently have, just download them and then drag them to your public, and then make sure that they look like so, where you have the textures, which are just images, and then you do have the bin and the gltf file. I did change the naming convention of these, so make sure if you ever change the naming convention, you must look for where it says this images array, and then you need to make sure you update the paths, as well as for the buffers for the URI, make sure it matches the .bin path or the .bin name. Okay, so that's enough here. So again, if you wanted to add your own, just go ahead and drag them into the public, and then you can reference them within your app.js. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into the project where we're going to start adding our canvas and then building out the rest of the site. So actually, before we start using the canvas from React 3 Fiber, I do want to talk about this components folder. I do have already created components so that we don't waste too much time recreating them. The header, which is the simple header that we have at the top, nothing special here. And then we do have a section.js. Now this can get a little complex, so I recommend just going in and just kind of playing around it. But really what section is going to represent is the different blocks or sections we have. Now I did not write this myself. This was grabbed from a code pin from the creator of React 3 Fiber, which is Paul Henschel. What you can do here is simply just look into how this works exactly, but this is kind of referring to adding that smooth scroll to each section. So as we're scrolling through, it's going to pass certain properties to kind of update how each section moves up and down the scrolling rig. So we aren't using the default browser scroll or the scrolling element in the browser. We are going to build our own scrolling area or scrolling rig, which allows us to have a much smoother effect as we're scrolling. If you scroll down here to the use section, there's this custom hook that comes with a lot of different things that we can reference. We don't reference them here at all in this project, but they are very helpful. He gives us the option to find the viewport width, the viewport height, the canvas width, canvas height. This mobile returns a Boolean depending on the width of the viewport, if it is under 700 or not. So these are different properties that you could play with. Again, we don't really use it, but it is an option. I changed the name to section, but it's typically called block in a lot of the examples that Paul Henschel provides. So we're going to be referencing this to add our model and that HTML within this section so that we can have that smooth scrolling effect. I just didn't want to spend so much time redoing this entire section, so you don't need to worry about it too much. And then we have state. State is going to allow us to define the the height of our entire project for the scrolling rig with the amount of pages we want. Pages does return sort of a max height of 100 viewport height. So we have 3 sections for 3 pages. Then the sections element, this is kind of just more or less related to, just updating the different, sections or areas that we are located on within the page. So I would just leave the state how it is with this sort of configuration. You can update it if you want, but this does match the fact that we can create 3 sections and rather smoothly using this section.js file. So it all kind of is a bit confusing. This is definitely a little bit more advanced when playing around with the React 3 Fiber reconciler or the library. So definitely just hold off on this for now. We're going to focus just learning very basic things, but still creating a very powerful site. So that does it for the breakdown for the components. And then we have the Sass file, which is just simple styles that, you don't need to spend too much time looking here. It's all very simple stuff. So first thing we're going to do is get rid of this container that gets rid of the starter branch. We're going to go ahead and bring in a canvas. And I do have auto import on, so this is gonna go ahead and auto import canvas for us from React 3 Fiber. So I already have canvas set up for us. What we can do is pass in certain properties that we kind of need to kind of help with our canvas. So we have color management, which adjusts the colors corresponding to whatever we assign, so it gives us a better look. And then we also have camera. And for our camera, what we're going to do is set the position first. So this does go by, I believe, X, Y, and Z. So we're going to set it 0, 0, and then 120. And then a FOV, which is the field of view. The default is 50, but we're going to give it a field of view of 70. Now we have our canvas already set up. And if you had watched my previous React 3 Fiber tutorial, I do go into more detail of what the canvas provides, but it just gives us the canvas that wraps around the scene as well as the camera. So it's very easy to use in comparison to just Three.js without React. I'm not going to spend too much time describing a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about. I will have a left panel that will go into more detail, but be sure to watch my previous episode. That one has, more detail regarding basics. Now, one thing I do want to mention is I am using Dry. And now what Dry is it allows us to kind of have these recipes or these custom components that can help us, speed up the process of building, a certain app. So I already have Dry installed. And what I can do is I can import, let's actually pull up the doc so I can show you. So I am on the Dry GitHub repository. And again, it's just a collection of useful helpers and abstractions for React 3 Fiber. So if we scroll down and look at sort of the index, it allows us to, right here, for example, for shapes, instead of us using meshes and mesh materials and things like that, we can just kind of, actually we'll still be using the material, but instead of having to define the different shapes, we can just use these components. For example, if we wanted a box, all we do is just bring in box or like round box, plane, and then we could do a sphere. The plane would represent, I guess, the floor. But we could do a sphere, and all we do is pass in the material. So it's just like a helper of allowing us to write Three.js code or React 3 Fiber code much faster. Let's go ahead and start using it. The very first thing that we're going to use from Dry is actually the HTML. So you cannot use HTML in the canvas. It doesn't register it, right? It doesn't pick it up. So to use HTML, we just need to use it from Dry and then pass this in within the canvas. So I'll just say Dry. And then the very first thing that we're going to do, which is going to be very simple, is just write HTML here. And I'm going to provide it a property that will say full screen, that will take up the entire screen. And then in here, I can start writing HTML. So I'm going to pass a container, and inside the container, I'll pass an H1 called title. And from here, I'll just say hello. So if I go out to our app, I think we need to actually run it. Let's bring this up here. Yeah. So just go ahead and run yarn start. And now we have hello. Now to test out dry even further, what we can do is just bring in a rounded box. So I'm going to comment this out, and then we'll do is rounded box. And instead of writing it ourselves, we can just copy it from here. So I will copy this, go back to our app, and then we can paste it inside the canvas. We can comment out this mesh props, and then let's go ahead and change the Z. So if we look now, it's going to be very small. If we change the Z next to like 20, this will zoom us in further. So here's our little box. If I get rid of wireframe, it will just be a cube. And so this is just giving us more, or not give us more, but just allowing us to write, Three.js code faster using pre-built components with dry. So I can get rid of this and just go back to what we were doing. So I will set this back to 120. I'll uncomment the HTML, and then we're back here. Perfect. So what I'll actually do now is I want to take out this HTML and create its own component. So I am going to Control X or Command X, and then from the top, I'll create a function called, or a component called HTML content. And now inside HTML content, what I'm going to do is just paste in the HTML that we just had, and then I'm going to render out HTML content here. So everything should still look the exact same, right? However, now we want to build upon this HTML content to provide it the model, as well as add the content that we need to actually add. Now what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and wrap this entire JSX here with a section. So I'll write section like so, but it's going to be capitalized because we're going to be importing the section component from our section.js. So at the very top here, let's go ahead and import section from components and section like so. We did get an error because the component does not contain a default export. That's fine. Let's go ahead and add the curly brackets. Because section isn't a default export, it has the use section hook and then the section. So we'll go ahead and write these brackets just to bring in section. Section is going to take in two props, a factor prop, which we'll set it to 1.5, as well as an offset prop. And this is related to the offset and sort of the inertia and kind of the amount of force you want as you're scrolling, so the section moves. It's not going to make much sense here because our scrolling rig is not yet built, but it'll make a lot more sense here as we continue on through the project. I'll play with these so that we can have different scrolling effects or different scrolling power for the different sections. Let's go ahead and Command X or Control X, getting rid of everything that's in here and copying it, because we still need to add a few more things. I am going to add a group, and now the position of my group is going to be set to the following. It's going to be 0, 250, and then 0. And again, when dealing with position, it's going to be X, Y, and Z. So inside the group now, we will paste in the HTML. And if we take a look, everything still looks the same. If I play with this position, set it to 200, it should be pushed down. So we are going to be kind of multiplying by 250 for each section. So this will be 250, then 0, and then negative 250 for the bottom. And that's going to be changed in the position. So what we could do next is start adding our model, which is located in the public folder. To add the model, what we're going to do is create its own component. Now I'll call this component a model. And what we're going to use is the use gltf loader hook from dry. So I'll go ahead and do a const gltf, and this will be set to use gltf loader, and it will auto import from dry. And then in here, we're going to pass the URL or the path. So the path that we're passing in is the following. So it's going to be / so that we can access the public directory, and then armchair yellow.gltf. go ahead and add a comma, and then we could pass true so that we could use Draco, I believe that's what it's called, or Draco, which if we look here, let's look for loaders. Draco use GLTF loader. That doesn't take me. Okay. Use GLTF loader. Well, it's a convenience hook that uses use loader, GLTF, and Draco. Use binary. So if we wanted to use a binary, we pass true. And Draco GLTF. Although I don't know if we are using, use Draco binaries for a custom path. Okay, I'll leave it as true. However, I do need to do more research here in GLTF. Okay, yeah, we can use binaries. Okay, cool. So yeah, pass true so that we can use the binaries. But now when we want to return the model, we'll do the following. We'll do return, and then we'll use a primitive. And inside the primitive, we'll pass an object prop, which this is going to receive the GLTF. And then we need to access an object further in GLTF, which is scene. So we're going to access the actual scene. And then we'll pass in dispose and set that to null. Save that. Now let's go ahead and render this out and see if it does actually work. So I have this group here within this HTML content. And what I'm going to do in here is create a mesh. Now you don't need to create a mesh, but I do want to play with the position of this model. So I will pass a mesh, and inside the mesh, we'll just pass in the model. And then for the mesh, we will have a position. And now we'll set the position to the following. It's going to be 0, and then the Y is going to be 35, and the ZN is going to be 0. Okay, let's save that and take a look. So we did get an error, and the error is related to model suspended while rendering, but no fallback UI was specified. Add a suspense fallback component higher in the tree to provide a loading indicator or a placeholder to display. Okay, so what this means is that we need to use suspense so that we can have a fallback as the model is loading. What we'll do is we'll grab suspense, we'll scroll down, and then inside canvas, we're going to pass in suspense, like so. And then inside suspense, pass the HTML content, and then as a fallback property in suspense, we're going to just set fallback to null for now, but we will create a loading indicator towards the end. So let's leave it like so and take a look now. Perfect. So hello did load. And then the chair did load as well, but it's completely black. And that's because we don't have light. If you don't have lights, then there's no color, which is pretty obvious. But now I do want to say that I also want to start creating the scrolling rig. What I want to do next. Position. So 35, it's pushed up. Let's push it down. So I think -35. So now we can have it centered. So now we're looking directly at the chair. But I do want to add lights. So I think we should add the lights. We should add the effect behind the chair of it spinning, and then add the scrolling rig. And honestly, we're pretty much almost done after that. So we've got our model loaded. Everything is good to go. I'm going to create a new function called lights. Not a function, but a new component called lights. And this is going to return the different lights that we want. So the very first light that we do want to return is an ambient light. And ambient light like that with the intensity of 0.3. And again, as I am adding all these elements, I am going to have descriptions on the right so that I don't leave you a bit confused. So lights is not assigned. Let's go ahead and add lights. We'll add it underneath the canvas like so. We'll just render that. Boom. So we have lights, or we have the ambient light, which gives it color, but we don't have the other lights that we need. So ambient light allows us to project light off of the objects. All right. I need to return more lights, so let's do that. We have ambient light at the top, and we need to use React fragments because we need to add additional lights. So go ahead and add those tags there. We're going to add a directional light. And the directional light will have a position. set to the following. So X will be 10, Y is 10, Z is 5, and then we do have intensity, which is going to be set to 1. All right, so let's see how it looks now. Okay, so it gives it a bit more color, which is nicer. Let's close out of that. And then I'm going to copy and paste this again because we have another directional light, but then the position and the intensity is different. So the X will be 0, Y is 10, and the Z is going to be 0. And then the intensity is going to be bumped up just a bit to 1.5. Okay, so it's much brighter towards the top part here. And then finally, we're going to add a spotlight, which I want it to kind of just be flashing at it from a very far distance. So we'll do that now, spotlight. And the intensity will be set to 1. And then a position set to the following. What am I doing? Okay. We will set the X to 0, Y to 1000, and then the Z to 0. So let's see how that looks. Okay. I wonder if we set the X to 0 and the Y to 1000. Okay, so that is hitting it direct on, which I do like it rather than being at the very top because we already have enough light at the top. Let's see one more time. Yeah, so it's really bright at the top. Rather have it on the X, which is hitting directly towards it. So now let's make this baby spin. To make it spin, it reminded me of the whole Zbinala meme. If anybody watches F1, let me know in the description. But what we're going to do is make it spin. So we're going to go down to the HTML content and we're going to, make the mesh or the group spin. So to make this thing spin, we need to add a ref. So const ref is set to a use ref. And then we're going to get an error because use ref is not being imported. And then we're going to provide the mesh the use ref. So we're specifically targeting the mesh here or the model only. And now I want to add a use frame. Now this is different than a use effect or anything in React. This is coming from React 3 Fiber. But what I want to do with the use frame is I want to grab ref.current, which will grab this mesh. Ref will just bring in the object, and then ref.current will grab the element. And then I want to do .rotation. .y is plus equal to 0.01. Let's go ahead and save this. And it auto imported use ref from React 3 Fiber. So now if we take a look, you can see that this is now spinning in kind of just in a circle, really, right? So it's just rotating as if we're just kind of showing off the chair, which is pretty cool. So use frame, it's pretty much just a callback that's going to run or add 0.01 to the rotation every single time it is rotated. So it's going to continue rotating in a circle. If I wanted to go the other way, I'll just add minus or equal 0.01 and it'll go the opposite direction. Perfect. So that's allowing us to have this spin. That's going to allow us to add the model with the lights. So we're making very good progress so far. What I want to do next is I want to add another HTML content here, and I want to add it to the bottom. But now this is going to be asking to, we're going to ask it to be unique and render different content in a different chair and put it in a different position. So let's do that and then add the scrolling rig. So the different properties I do want to pass in here to make these unique are the following. So I'm going to grab the properties before defining them, which is fine. I'm going to have children. I'm going to add BG color, or we could wait on the BG color for now. I'm going to add model path and position. So these three are going to be unique for now, which children will represent the content, the HTML content. Model path would represent the path we pass in to render the chair. And then position is the position where we're going to set the kind of the group, right? So what we need to do is define those props in HTML content down below. First thing we have is the model path. Now the model path is going to be the following. So I'm going to grab this right here, armchair GLTF, and I'm going to pass it here like that. And then position, I'm going to pass in 250 for the first one. And then for children, we don't pass anything in. All we need to do is not make it self-closing. We'll add HTML content like that. So like so, and then inside this HTML content, I'll get rid of the second one. Inside this HTML content, we're going to render this div. So I'll take that, I'll paste it in here like that. And then inside of this HTML content component, I'll get rid of this and just return children. And then let's start plugging in the model path and the position. Position is going to be for the group, so we'll get rid of this Y and then we'll pass in position. Maybe I should make this a bit more defined, so I'll say position Y rather than position. And then make sure we pass in position Y like so. And then our model path is going to be passed into the model component. So model path will be model path. And then make sure you go to our model component, and instead of this hard-coded path, we're just going to add model path. Make sure you use destructuring to bring in model path. So let's go ahead and save that and take a look. Everything should be the exact same. However, now we want to load more unique content. So what I'm going to do is copy and comment this out and then paste it in here. And I'm going to change a few things. The first thing I'll change is just this yellow to green so that we could render the green chair. And in the content, I will say buy. I'll leave the position Y for 250 for now. So now we have buy, and we have a green chair. So it's becoming a bit more, dynamic in a way, if you want to say that. What we actually want to do though is provide better content, and then we want to change the position. So this position is going to be set to position Y, which means it's going to be pushed down, but you can't see it because we don't have a scrolling rig made just yet, but we're going to do that here in a second. So I'm going to uncomment the yellow, which will just bring us back to hello. And you can leave the content how you want, but let's make the content, I don't know. I know in the final one I do have, hey, we have online chairs, a new way to see online chairs. We have different colors, we have monochrome. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to give it the name, or the name of the color of the chair, which yellow is going to be yellow chair, green will be green chair. I don't need to copy everything I do in the final project. So next, what we can take a look at is doing the scrolling rig. So the scroll area is going to be outside of the canvas. So if we look for canvas here, we're going to build the scroll area. So I'll do dot scroll area like so. And inside the scroll area, we have two divs. So the first div that we have is going to be related to the DOM content, or the content we render. So the HTML content will be rendered in here. And then we'll have another div. And I actually don't need class names for these, so I'll get rid of these. But we'll have another div which will return the height of our pages. So what I'll do here is first define the DOM content area. So at the very top, what we're going to do is add style, and the DOM content is going to have a position of sticky and a top set to 0. It's also going to have a ref attribute, which the ref attribute will be called DOM content. So any of the HTML will actually go in here, which we defined, in the containers. And I'll show you how to do that here in a second. Next, the second div that we have will be related to the page height. So what we'll do is do height, and this is equal to the stage pages or the state pages that we have. So we did define those in the state, and all we need to do is bring that in is just state.pages, and we'll multiply this by 100 viewport height. So state is undefined as well as DOM content, but what we'll do is fix the DOM content first. So const DOM content is equal to useRef like so. And then if we scroll to the bottom, state is not defined, which we just need to bring in state. So page state, import state from, and this is coming from components state, which we defined here. So it's just kind of configuration related to our height of the application as well as scrolling behavior in a way. So go ahead and save that, and everything seems to be working well. What we need to do now is actually get content inside this DOM content. So if we look now and open up the console, go to elements, we'll see that we have this position relative here, which is going to be our entire canvas. And then we have this scroll area, which has nothing inside. But what we want to do is add the yellow HTML tags inside this position sticky. So I think that there might be an actual better way to do this, but this is a way you can. I don't necessarily like this method all that much because it isn't dynamic to the page height. We kind of need to predefine what our height looks like and then build around that. I think there's a better way to do it, which I'm still looking into, but I think there's a code pin by Paul Henschel where he creates a custom hook that is called every single time the page height changes, and it updates dependent on the height of the canvas. I will look into that maybe in a future video, but definitely check that out, and I'll have that linked in the description below. But for now, we're going to use this method where we define our fixed height and then work around that. So we have our height set, everything is good to go. We need to add the ref content in, or we need to add the content in the DOM content. So what this means is, let's first go to where we have this HTML content, and we're going to pass in DOM content. So we'll do DOM content is equal to DOM content, and we need to do the same exact thing for the first HTML content, these two right here. So let's scroll to the top, and then we'll bring in DOM content. And then this HTML here will receive a portal set to DOM content. So now if we look at our scroll area, we now have inside this position sticky, this div of the yellow. If we open it up here, container, title yellow, and then we also have the one on the bottom. So we can scroll now, but it doesn't actually move that fixed area, or it doesn't have like a function of the scroll area. And that's because we haven't created that on scroll function, which we'll do right now. So in the app, what we're going to do is the following. We'll create a ref for scroll area, and then we'll create an on scroll function. So const on scroll, and we'll pass in an event. And what we'll do is return the following. We'll say state, which we already defined state, .top.current. And top.current is coming from this create ref that we create. And so we're just grabbing the element now, is set to e.current, or sorry, e.target, which is e.target will receive the scroll area, this one here, which we'll define in a second. So e.target.scrollTop. Now we need to create a use effect, which will run the onScroll function. So we're going to return void onScroll. And the reason we're returning void is because we want to define it as undefined initially. And then we'll say target. Target is going to be set to the scroll area.current. And then just pass in an empty array. Perfect. Now this is getting an error because we haven't defined use effect. So scroll to the top and bring in use effect. And then let's actually scroll to the bottom here with the scroll area. And then for the scroll area, we're going to provide it a ref set to scroll area. And then on scroll function is going to be on scroll, like so. Let's save that and take a look now. We have yellow in the yellow chair, and as we start scrolling, we get to the green chair. Now this model brings in its own kind of shadow, but if you don't want that, you can just delete the shadow texture and then create your own shadow with the plane. If we scroll down even further, you can see that it adds, there's a lot more room left to scroll down. And this is primarily related to the state pages multiplied by 100, which state pages is 3. So it's given us 3 sections. And looking at this now, it looks like I did make a mistake, which it's not really a mistake, but it's just kind of, I messed up the naming convention. So what we'll do here is state.pages, which is kind of be state.sections. And if we set these to 2, it would only multiply the height by 100 viewport height. Now that is, up to you on how you want to name these. I'm going to leave it as sections here. Oops, let's cancel that. I'm going to leave it as sections because it does make more sense, because pages refers to entire pages, but then sections refers to how many sections you have in a page. It's going to be the exact same thing, but it's just sake for cleaning it up. Now we do have one more chair that we need to render at the bottom here, so let's actually do that. All that's going to tell us to do is just copy HTML content again, and then change armchair green to armchair gray, and then change the title to say gray. And now all we do is refresh. And then now as we start scrolling, it is kind of a bit laggy. You can see that now they're rendering on top of each other. And that's because I didn't update the position Y. So position Y is going to be -250, which will push it down even further. So now we have yellow, we go down to green, we go back up to yellow, we go to green, and we go even further to gray. So now if I scroll all the way down, we get to gray, we get to green. So green right here is in the center of the entire canvas, which is set to position 0. If we go up 250, we go to this yellow, and if we go -250, we go to this gray. So that's how that sort of math works behind the scrolling. It's a bit confusing, but it makes sense once you start playing with it. Perfect. Now what I want to do is I want to take a look at changing the background color. And for us to change the background color, what we're going to use is an intersection observer. If we go to package.json though, you can see that I have React intersection observer, which allows us to use a use-in-view hook to return a Boolean every time we are in the section, will return true, saying we can actually view this section or not. So let's do that real quick. At the very top, let's create a comment for intersection observer. In this intersection observer, what we're going to do is import use-in-view, which is a custom hook. And we're importing it from react-intersection observer. Now I'm going to scroll down to the HTML content component here. And what we're going to do is const ref item. And then we're going to pass in view is set to use in view. And then we're going to pass some properties, or actually one property, which is the sirens are going off. Let's hope they're okay. Okay, so the sirens are gone now. What we'll do is, I pass in a threshold of 0, which just means that kind of gives us like margin-ish, right? If we don't want to, I'll add the description, I forgot. Fuck. Okay, so the threshold, I think what it means is that there is no offset, or there's no kind of additional margin that we need to view, right? If setting it to 0 just leaves it like so. But what we'll do is this ref item is going to be passed in, and I just realized I don't have a div element in this HTML component. But what I'll do is I'll create a div and I'll call it, what should I call this? I don't know, we'll just call this view. And I'll provide this ref, the ref item. And I actually don't even need a class name. Just add a div around the children just so that we can have a ref. So now I'll add a use effect, right? And what we'll do in here is I will say in view and, which is going to say true, run this, right? If it's false, we're not going to run it at all, but we're going to grab the document dot body dot style dot background, and we're going to set this to BG color. Now BG color will be dynamic dependent on the section, And I'll show you how to do that here in a sec. But as a dependency, we're going to pass in view. Make sure that we grab this BG color now and bring it in as destructuring. This means we do need to pass BG color as a prop. So let's pass BG color as a prop for the first one. And for the first one, we're going to say BG color represents the following hex code. So it's going to be that orangish color, F15946. I'm going to copy this, scroll down to the second HTML content. And in here, I'll pass a purplish color, which is going to be 571EC1. And then on the last one, I'm going to have BG color of the following. It's going to be grayish, right? So 636567, like so. Perfect. So let's take a look now. If I refresh, we have the yellow messed up. And I think this is messed up mainly because of this div right here. So to fix that and center it again, what I'll do is I'll pass in the class name of container, and that will fix it. But then it's kind of redundant, the fact that we're passing container and then container again. So get rid of the container that's inside the children, or representing children inside the HTML content, because we don't need to render a container twice. So now we're back set to yellow. And now if I scroll down, the background color turns purple. If I scroll down, the background color turns gray, and then purple, and then back to orange, and then back to purple. So these entire sections are at a height of 100 viewport height. Once I scroll into the next 100 viewport height, it will turn to the corresponding color of that specific section. Yellow is orange, green is purple, and gray is gray. Okay, so that's gonna do it for me. If you did enjoy, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. And lots more content coming soon. I've just been really busy. Thanks for staying patient with me, guys. Stay safe out there and have a wonderful day.